Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our breakout session today. We're going to talk about applications of augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality in AEC, use cases, and how it's going to affect our workflow these days. We have industry experts today as our panelists. We're going to introduce them one at a time. I'm going to start with myself. This is Saeed Eslami. I'm CEO and founder of VisualLive. VisualLive is a software company to take CAD or BIM model files. We have Revit, Navisworks, or other file uploaders to allow you push your file to the Microsoft HoloLens, iPad, or Android for augmented reality experience in AEC. Today, I'm honored here to talking to our industry experts in AEC, discussing how they use the different products, how they use a augmented reality headset, virtual reality headset, and how they can get benefit of that. Let's start with Allison. Allison, please introduce yourself and give us a little background of how you use augmented reality, virtual reality in your company, please.
Sure. Hi, Saeed. I'm Allison Yanites. I'm the Immersive Technology Lead at Arcadis in North America. Arcadis is a natural and built asset consulting firm that specializes in design build consulting to support water treatment facilities, environmental remediation systems, infrastructure projects such as hospitals and roadways. Specifically, I'm focusing on implementing augmented reality and virtual reality solutions, including 360-degree photo capture and wearable technology, like hands-free headsets that we use for live video communication and collaboration that have an augmented reality component to them.
That's awesome. That's interesting. And we're going to get back to you shortly. John, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Good morning. My name is John Rygg. I work for Kiewit Technology Group as a technology strategist. It's my role to go back and look for new emerging technologies that might help operations or safety within the company. And augmented reality and virtual reality is a large component of that. Kiewit is a large construction company in North America. We build just about everything but homes. So much like Allison, we have a lot of needs to be able to visualize BIM models within augmented reality, virtual reality, as well as do hands-free operations for inspection, and be able to walk around a job site and visualize. So very similar to what Allison's use cases are as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, we get back to you shortly. Kurt, would you introduce yourself, please?
Well, thank you, Saeed. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Kurt Maldovan. I'm the Global Solutions Director for Digital Delivery at Jacobs, and we're a solutions-based firm focused in two areas: people and places solutions, as well as critical mission solutions. My personal experience has been in the built environment, mission critical, federal, and PMCM markets. And much like John and Allison described, we're using VR, AR, XR in the office to aid us in designing our work out on the construction site, to help us understanding conditions, how are things being installed, what are potential opportunities for getting modeling into real built environment situations. Thank you.
That's awesome. And Zach, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Zachary Wassenberg. I'm an extended reality innovation manager at Burns & McDonnell. Burns & McDonnell is a 100% employee-owned engineering, architectural, construction, technology service provider and technology provider now. I help a lot on the extended reality technologies such as RealWear, visual inspection, sight vision. We're using them primarily right now for COVID support with remote communication, and then visualizing BIM 3D models in the field.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Sounds like we have the best people here in the panelists from different hardware, different software, and different use cases. So since last year, we've seen the hardware is improving, softwares are improving. The big thing for augmented reality was HoloLens 2 was announced to the market. So it was back in 2019, November. And it's about like 8 or 9 months that we have it now in our hands. I'll start with John. I know, John, you're the first early adopter of the HoloLens 1, and I remember that you made like a custom package for 8 HoloLens at the same time you carry it. So, and you're first early adopter of HoloLens 2 at the same time. So, what do you see the big difference on the HoloLens 1, HoloLens 2? How do you see the improvement of what Microsoft made as a hardware?
Yeah, I think from the two differences between the two devices is mostly usability and comfort. So definitely the comfort perspective, they redesigned it so it sit on your head. It can flip up so that, especially on a job site where we're walking around, we don't want to have something blocking our vision all the time. It makes it much easier. And then in the usability, it allows for it to recognize your hands in much finer detail and be able to interact with the holograms in a much different way, a little bit more natural than just the 2 gestures the HoloLens 1 really provided. It does have a little bit wider field of view in the holograms, but it still has some limitations, much like the HoloLens 1 did of working outside. It's dealing with something that's built with light, and anytime you're in a bright environment, you tend to get washouts in that environment. So you have to compensate that by either using it indoors or even putting tinting on the lenses so that it darkens the outdoor visibility.
That's interesting. So does the tinting for HoloLens work for you? So for outside, do you see improvement on the visions of visualization of the model files?
Yeah, it definitely does. We've done a lot of experiments outside because that's where our office is. Most of our work is done outside. And so we've done different versions of tint on the outside. It does work well in bright environments. The downfall to that is if it certainly becomes a cloudy day, then you need to take the tint off, because then it can be actually too much for the hologram to become overpowering, and you can't see the real world at that point. So it is a trade-off. Hoping someday to have like an electrochromic display that's adjustable on the HoloLens. That would be a great addition to it. So it allows us to work outside in a better manner.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing your experience with HoloLens 2. Allison, I know that you're very focused on solution-driven, and you look at everything as an ROI and how it applies in the workflows. So in AEC, from design all the way to design coordination, pre-construction, coordination of the field coordination, and then fabrication, all the way to installation and applications of operations for record remote access. So which application have you seen improved, and in your company, how you guys use it mostly in those applications? Can you elaborate more, please, for our audience?
Sure. So I think we have different solutions, like I alluded to earlier, that we deploy. So I think out of them, I'll speak briefly about visualizing BIM content, 3D content through HoloLens or a mobile device in the field to compare a BIM model to what's happening in the real world. So for design verification, install verification. Then we also are using augmented reality on headsets like the RealWear HMT1, where it's more of a communication and collaboration tool. So we're not seeing a design in 3D, but we're able to send information back and forth and draw in real time on that live video feed to communicate really effectively with the team in the field and see what they're seeing. And then we're also using reality capture. So 360 photos and the ability to then augment those photos with annotations, issue detections, and have any size group of participants see that site virtually and remotely from their home, but see it in almost real time and be able to, again, collaborate on that platform. So across those 3 examples, I think the return on investment for each of them has been effective enough that we're continuing to do all of it across our work. The augmented reality 3D visualization of BIM modeling is focused in on those projects where we have BIM models and we're doing designs and we're doing install verification. It's been a really effective way of seeing in minutes the differences between a BIM model and something that may have been installed incorrectly in the field. So the jobs where we're using it to compare, on a daily or weekly basis, our designs to the installs, it's saved a lot of time, and it's been a great way to communicate those changes. Just seeing the pipe differences and then addressing those issues really immediately after seeing them in the field. And then for the others, especially with COVID-19, the ability to communicate better to our field staff from remote locations, whether it's with the live video feed or through the reality capture portals, has been extremely effective in the last 6 months, and something that has kind of shifted in our business in terms of just planning those types of things, to do more of them in the future, to continue to reap the benefits of travel reduction after it's not necessary, but that it's something that we'll continue to do.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you guys are using multiple hardwares, multiple software, application solution for different phases of the projects, and you're looking at everything as a time and cost saving. So that's interesting. You mentioned design validation and verification and saves you time. Can you elaborate more on those? So because those are like real applications that you guys are using these days. Is that correct?
So one example of design verification with augmented reality 3D visualization, we have one example is we were doing a redesign of a facility, a water treatment plant facility, and we needed to redesign the space with some new equipment that was going into this facility. So we were able to do the redesign in BIM. Our designers did that process, then go out in the field with the facility operators, our designers, engineers, our client, and other stakeholders, and all be in that real space, load the 3D model in that space, and have a dynamic conversation about how this was going to work and what we needed to change with that model. So that was a critical component of the timeline of work that we needed to do to verify that that design was going to work best for everyone involved, and that they could all really feel how it was going to be in that space with the 3D visualization tools.
That's interesting. That you can visualize the design before spending any money in construction. So pretty much save your money and material and time. So that's amazing. Kurt, Jacobs, large company, different locations, different regions, and how do you guys use augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality in your work? Can you help us to find out your use cases, please?
Yeah, so I won't repeat too much of what Allison said, because that's really spot on from what we continue to adopt in our practice. I think there's a couple jumping off points from what you said, Allison, I'll put an emphasis on, is that we've really, we've latched onto it becoming more of a tool than anything else. In prior years, and maybe it's a complication of the climate that we're in today, but in prior years, we would do some testing and dabbling, and we would find, like you described, John, with HoloLens 1 to HoloLens 2, there are some things that were lacking. But today, we're seeing real applications, and those real applications that I want to put the emphasis point on are something like a factory acceptance testing, where we can't get people into environments that we could as easily as we could previously. And then reducing the amount of teams that we send to a project site to do a survey. So there had been a goal, or the mantra before was we'd send 5 to 6 to maybe even 8 people, if you include project management, to a job site to do a site walk. Well, now we can reduce that to 1 or 2. And sometimes those 1 or 2 people don't even have to be people that work for Jacobs. They could be people that are operating the facility. And we're basically guiding them through and saying, I want to see this very specific area because we know that there's preventative maintenance that may need to be done, or we're assessing the condition of the equipment that's in there. And then say the other thing that we're doing, and I'm glad you mentioned it, VR, is, where we pushed AR was essentially coming from VR. So we do a lot on the design review side. And while I would say we're not heavily embedded in AR in design because it's much more contextual when you do take it out to the project site and you can see it in the real position and you can confirm that there is space for the ductwork or lighting or the equipment that you're putting in place. In the office, in a design review setting, we're very much adopting the virtual reality because we can then immerse multiple people. We can follow each other. We can mark up. And that's the other thing that we're seeing from a BIM standpoint is that we're getting people into the less clash detection methodology of looking at the numbers, the thousands of hard hits, to focusing in on those very specific areas that really require design intervention and changes. And so we're able to do that through a virtual type setting today.
That's awesome. Virtual reality, augmented reality, you guys are playing both of them. And you mentioned something interesting that reducing people, staff in the field and the challenge of COVID-19 and these days that we need to reduce the people job sites and also it saves the meetings. One of the things that AR VR always help is reduce the meetings and reduce time waste on this collaboration. So we're going to get back to the COVID-19 challenges for everyone, and I would like everyone to address that. But since you brought it up, so you sound like that this remote assist type application is helping you in your company to actually live stream what people see in the field to any remote workers. Can you help us understand that more and help our audience to see the applications of that, please?
So from our side, I think the one big breakthrough was being able to have Teams on a device, right? Whether it's a tablet device, whether it's a RealWear HMT1 device, or HoloLens with Teams, being able to call up. We've now transitioned a lot of our practice to using Teams as a primary collaboration platform. And it's not foreign anymore, right? Is that, oh, I need to go into this system and I need to log in and figure out how to do it. It's all integrated. And so to make that much more seamless for us, and even on a phone, I think that is something everybody has it in their pocket when they were going to the job site. Now it's just switching that and reminding people that I'm actually here and I can call somebody real time and see what I see. And you can start to ask those questions, which then reduces the churn in the system of, now I have to go back and I have to document what I wrote in my notebook and send it to people. I can just solve the problem right away.
Yeah, that's been a great way to reach out to the field. Normally, Teams is an office application, and that really does allow us to expand the use of our communication tools to the field using Teams and some of the augmented reality tools with the goggles and that type of thing.
So that's great. That John, sounds like you guys are using Teams and this remote assist application to get people on board. So I get back to you with that COVID-19 questions. Let's actually talk to Zach and see. Zach, you said you guys using different hardware, software solutions, and can you talk about your workflow and how you can apply it to AEC and your company, basically, and help our audience to understand your use cases, please?
Yeah, and I won't add a tremendous amount to the BIM viewing in the field. Burns & McDonnell is definitely doing that. We view that right now as kind of a high impact, low scalable technology right now. So you can have, a foreman on site, an engineer on site that's visualizing the BIM model, which is very valuable. But that's tricky right now to scale out because it typically takes a pretty large amount of training, familiarity with the technology itself. So we are doing that in a pilot phase right now with Trimble Sight Vision, and we've had some good results with that, many of which have been talked about already. What we're looking at right now and what we've been working with for about 3 years now has been the RealWear hardware, and then we've paired it with visual inspection. So some of the other panelists talked a little bit about Microsoft Teams, which launched right at the start of COVID, I believe, March of 2020. And we did test with Microsoft Teams, and we see that there is value there. But what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to couple as many work processes in the field to a single training experience. And so we've done that with visual inspection. Since visual inspection can do video calling, it can also do some data collection processes and some workflow execution processes. And so when you look at that in a workflow for someone who's using the RealWear device, we only have to do one training for that. Whereas if we had to use Microsoft Teams on the RealWear device, we would have to switch back and forth between the two apps. And that can cause a little bit of confusion and friction in the user process. So we see the value in integrating with Microsoft Teams, but right now we're trying to streamline with a single process. And with VisualSpection, we're trying to go past just video calling in the field, a massive return on investment, massive success during COVID, but we want to get more towards scalable value, which is just more than a single use case. So from a scalable value perspective, we're looking at hands-free data gathering with the VisualSpection software. And there is what I would call an assisted reality component to it. It's not full-fledged viewing models in the field, but what we can do is we can integrate VisualSpection with a GIS. For those familiar with some of the terms, Geographical Information System, it's what I would consider a base component to a BIM model, where you've got geographical components of the assets. So we integrate those GPS locations, and then we can view those GPS locations as floating dots in the field. And so when you go out there, you're a first-time user. We'll talk a little bit more about how this has helped during COVID, but for first-time users, for those who aren't up to speed, they are not the subject matter experts, and they want to be able to visualize the exact asset that they're supposed to be working on, they can pull it up as a green floating dot. So that's the augmented or assisted reality component of it. And then we can assign data collection aspects to that, where we're feeding that data that they collect back into the BIM model, be it notes, photos, video clips, just text information as metadata. And then we're also able to assign specific workflows to those assets, guiding them through a work process. It could be an inspection. It could be that we want them to assemble parts of the asset through the construction lifecycle, and integrating all of that into kind of a single training session and trying to scale that. And so in terms of scalability, it takes us about 1 to 2 hours to get people up and running proficiently on the technology. Now, learning curve is still there. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it, but in terms of the large scaling, lower value, that's what we've been working on recently.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you found a solution to scale in your company, augmented reality to scale in enterprise. It's been a challenge before, but now everyone found a use case. And so can you help our audience understand? So this is more for design phase, coordination, or closeout, or operation asset management. So what phase of the construction project for AEC clients are you guys using this GIS workflow?
Yeah, so we're using it in all of the processes of the life cycle. So scoping and proposal, you can do a video conference call, get everyone on board with what the scope is, get familiar with the location, be it a brownfield or a greenfield site. During that process of the initial proposal phase, we want to do data collection to make sure that if it's a brownfield, the site conditions line up with the BIM model that we have, or more than likely two-dimensional CAD files or Bentley files. So we're documenting with photos, doing that in an organized GIS system. And then as we go through the life cycle, those files are being referenced, those photos, against the files that we've been given from the client during the design phase, and referencing and comparing those during the engineering process. And then when we go to construction, we're constantly trying to make sure that the things that we're building, the things that we're adding, those are being up to date in the system. So we've got photos. So if an issue does occur, an engineer can go and reference those photos in the 4K resolution. Since video calling is very much restricted to the geographical location and the local cellular network, we don't always get high definition quality video calls. Typically we get standard def or low def. So they're able to supplement the standard def, low definition video call quality that they're getting with the 4K images that are being uploaded through that. And then as we go through the construction process, when we get to checkout and commissioning, that can be a workflow process. So throughout the entire life cycle, we can use this technology and have been using it with some pretty good successes. It's really about getting it integrated into the process. I won't say that a single project has used the technology for every single process in the phase of the life cycle of a project, but there are a few projects that have 2 or 3 of those phases integrated, and it's about slowly integrating to get a full ecosystem throughout the life of the project.
Got it. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experience. This is very unique, and I'm sure that most of our audience, they got a lot of value from what you shared. John, you mentioned Microsoft Teams. You mentioned you guys using for BIM modeling, View the BIM model, and Microsoft Teams. So can you elaborate more of your workflow and how you see the applications from different design phase, design, construction, coordination, and all the way to operations? Can you elaborate more how these solutions that has been built so far in augmented reality over the past couple of years is helping Kiewit, yourself, your company, to scale augmented reality applications?
Yeah, and for the augmented reality applications, we started off very early on with the HoloLens 1 and had to make our own applications to begin with. And it was very time consuming, but it still would create a lot of benefit for visualization. So we started off very early with the low hanging fruit, just for visualization for proposals and working with clients and get some visualization so they could understand what their models look like in reality. Since then, we've been working with applications like VisualLive, and that allows us to easily go from a CAD model directly into the HoloLens in 5 minutes, to where it used to take us a month to be able to bring a model in when we first started working with the HoloLens. So that's greatly expanded the use of the HoloLens throughout our group. Before, we had a team of people that was doing development to create the models and put them in the HoloLens. Now we can hand off a HoloLens to the job site along with software and some training. If they're proficient in CAD, they can pretty much be on their own and create the uses for using the HoloLens. So before, I said we started off on the low-hanging fruit, making proposals and bid information, and now we're looking more and more using that out in the field, trying to get that in the hands of different types of people that are actually doing the work, to see how we might be able to work better and more intelligently, be able to visualize what issues there might be on the job, understand where things don't line up with the BIM model where they are in real life, and use it to prevent things as simple as digging up utilities. So we've done some work with LiDAR and being able to map out utilities in the ground very accurately and adjust our BIM models to match that. And then we can put the HoloLens on, align it to the site, and basically have X-ray vision in the ground, so that we can see what utilities are there and where we might have an issue. And we've actually tried that out to where we've lined it up, and they were doing excavation of utilities, and the utilities ran right in the ground, right up to the hole where it was open, and ran right over the pipes that were exposed. So there's a lot of different things we can do with augmented reality in different areas, and we're always constantly, I think, like everybody else, trying to find out ways to use that in different areas of the company, different parts of the process of building whatever we're building. So it's always a learning curve. I don't think we'll ever be saying that we're done. We're always looking for the next thing to use it at.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, we've been EWTS for the past couple of years, and Microsoft HoloLens started 2015. It's now 5 years. It sounds like you've seen the improvement in workflows. You've seen the ease of use, the scalability, the solution, hardware, software. And thank you very much for sharing your experience of the underground utility and how you guys can use that for that aspect of the use case. So COVID-19 and issues that you have. So what do you see COVID-19 challenge for you to scale augmented reality, John, in the Kiewit and these teams or remote assist applications? So do you see the benefit of that in your workflows?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Kiewit switched over to Teams right before COVID, and usually when we do that, something like that, it's a pretty slow uptake. And with the onset of COVID, that really was a catalyst for using Teams. We've adopted it like no other application we've adopted. People have really taken hold of it, and applications like the remote assist in HoloLens and the HMT1 really has taken off with Teams, and we have looked at HMT1 for several years, and it looked like a great application. But really, the uptake in getting it used is the fact that it now integrates with Teams. So, like I said earlier, I think it allows you to go from just a communication tool from the office to a communication tool that works in the field as well. And you're not plugging Teams, but Microsoft Teams already also released a walkie-talkie feature with a push-to-talk application that allows you to get in the field. And because it's integrated with Teams, I see that as being a great uptick in usage also. So I think it's always
awesome.
With hardware, you're always looking for the killer app, right? And I think because Teams is a pretty widely used application and pretty easily used, that this hardware like HoloLens and HMT1 really fit into that well, and is going to be adopted even faster than I think normal.
That's awesome. It's good to hear. It's in the enterprise, the challenge is a smooth transition from existing workflow and the fact that your workflow was Microsoft Teams, and now all these hardwares are integrating the Teams to their device and make it easy for you to scale it, and your team, they don't need to learn a new tool. So that's amazing story. Allison, what do you think of scalability of the augmented reality and also COVID-19 challenges that you have in Arcadis?
Yeah, so I mean, to add on to the conversation, we've seen the same thing in our business as well. We're also users of Microsoft Teams, as are many of our clients. So it makes it just a really easy way to connect, whether it's with the HMT1 and then or with other devices and sharing your screen to Microsoft Teams. So that's been a great change in the last few months. With COVID specifically, I mentioned it before, but the 360-degree reality capture has been another technology that's we've been using for many years, but at this point, but in the last 6 months have really seen increased benefit from it for that virtual presence. So we're able to send one person out to a site with a 360-degree camera. They can capture in full detail that site in a matter of, seconds per picture, and not very much time usually to capture a full site. And in almost real time, the whole project team, clients, stakeholders, whoever has access to that site can see everything as soon as that project is synced. So later that morning, they can see the progress that's been made and go in there and edit and see, everyone can add in their comments, use it collaboratively, or use it to present a site walk or a bid walk, or to do design review, or to do construction review, inspections. We've really found a lot of use cases from it. And it's just been a great way to engage everybody on site when we can't do it in person.
That's awesome. So you basically using Microsoft Teams, HoloLens, and for live streaming real time. And if they want to document it for later on meetings, so 360 photo is working for you very well, right?
Right. So it's a combination of whether we have the live communication or the static, almost real time, or less frequently updated and documented capture. So using both separately and together in many times to really improve collaboration and communication between these sites, and really leveraging those tools for engagement. Yeah.
Great. That's go ahead, Karen.
Could I add into that just a little bit?
Of course, yeah. Yeah,
a
please.
bit of an anecdote, as you talk about the 360 photos, I see that as an amazing opportunity going forward, because thinking back to earlier in my career, and anybody that spent time on that construction site, depending upon your role, you may be out on site all day, every day, experiencing it yourself, or you may have the goal of going out once a day, once a week, and being able to now have that at your fingertips, where you don't have to walk to the job site or walk through the job site. You can teleport yourself to the very specific area that you want to see the progress on. I think that is, again, getting back to the point that I was making before, having people look at the information and make decisions based on what they're seeing, the visuals, the data. But Saeed, I wanted to go back kind of to your other point around scalability and thinking about what else is next. And, for me, I think about Teams, and I think about the way that we've used Teams, and we're using it as a data repository in many senses. And I think about other applications of AR and XR that I've seen, where you talk about pulling up work instructions, or you talk about pulling up other product data. I think that's really the next gen of what we'll start to see, is people pushing that content to the devices if they're not already. And then beyond that, thinking about how do we tie into Internet of Things, sensors, real-time performance. So with your head-mounted display, you can look at something, you can scan a QR code, you can scan a hotspot, whatever it is on the back end, and then get the real-time performance, and then again, make decisions based on what you're seeing, and then use that as a means to optimize, enabled through AR, XR, etc. Thank you.
That's awesome. And how about the COVID-19 challenges you guys have, Kurt? Do you want to add any comments in that? Do you see that as an opportunity for technology and software and hardware in AR, VR, or do you see that next year probably it's going to be less applications, more applications? Can you see what you see in the future?
My personal opinion is huge opportunity. We get these swaths of people that seems like they come in weeks at a time, where people will ask us, how do we become more efficient? How do we get onto the job site where we can't send people to the job site? So exactly what we were talking about before. I don't see when we do go back to life as normal, if it's ever going to be back to what we're used to before, people are not going to jettison the technology. They're just going to continue to adopt it, in my opinion. So we're not going to retrench. We're going to continue to push, and we're going to continue to adopt. We're going to come up with new ways of using these types of devices. And like I said, it's about, maybe John, to your point of, well, how can the field of view get better? How can we have the automatic tint detection? How can we have other hardware capabilities that are embedded into these devices that really push the usability aspect?
COVID-19 impact on society was very bad, it was negative, but it was an opportunity, made an opportunity for us in the technology and construction to actually, people look at it different ways. How do you see that, Zach? So people now, it opened the eyes for a lot of people that, we have to work remote, we need to find a software, technology of hardware to actually be more efficient. And we've been talking for years and years that technology can save you time and money and brings ROI for you. How do you see that in the President McDonnell in your company?
Yes, I think John actually put it best, calling COVID a catalyst. And that's really what we've seen. I think all industries have seen this, but especially the construction industry, as many critical infrastructure projects could not be put on hold. And we saw that at Burns & McDonnell. What I've kind of summarized it as is 5 years of innovation has taken place in 6 months. So if you can maintain and stay on your feet and try to help all of your users out, we've seen 1,000% user growth. That's not a statistic I made up. We looked that up right before this panel, and 1,000% user growth in 6 months is substantial. I will disagree a little bit with Kurt. I think that we will continue to see continued usage of the technologies that supported COVID. But one hurdle that I see, and I saw this before COVID, and I think we'll see it after COVID has kind of gone a little bit away, is change management. So while they've adopted these processes, the future processes, that's something that the viewers should always keep on front of mind is, how do we approach users about this? How do we adopt change within our organization? Because once you get a process standardized on, you want to go to the next process, but they want to stay with the current process. And so I think COVID has made it a lot easier because it's such a catalyst that everyone's willing to try anything. But once we get some of these COVID processes in place, that'll be something to think about going forward is, how does my organization approach change? Do we have change practitioners? Do we communicate properly? So while COVID has helped alleviate those issues, I think they're probably going to start coming back, a year or two after COVID.
Yeah, because you mentioned one of your challenges for scalability for the BIM or CAD model files was learning curves and training. Do you see people now that they have to work remote, do they see like necessity of learning the technology, learning augmented reality, putting HoloLens on, or using the other headsets do you see that people now is getting more? Do you see like adoption is easier with the COVID challenge, or?
Yeah, definitely. It's so much easier. People are, lining up in queues to get their hands on this technology. Training is always difficult, especially when you're hit with a global pandemic and you're not really expecting it. We were fortunate in that we had been using the technology for a couple of years, so we understood how to train quickly and concisely. Because with some of these technologies, what I have found is when you train someone the first time, it'll take 6 hours, and then by the 100th time, it takes an hour. And so that was the point that we were at when COVID hit. So we had some, alleviation on that front where training only took an hour. But some of the other technologies, you're trying to deploy these in the middle of COVID. You've got people lining up to use them, and you're trying to figure out how to train them quickly. So that's one issue that we continue to combat is how do we train quickly, concisely, give the people in the field who are not always the most patient individuals. Construction crews are trying to get stuff done quickly and effectively. So trying to get them the actual use cases they need and trained up quickly.
That's awesome. So we have a couple of more minutes. Let's actually wrap up with conclusions. So John, what do you see future of augmented reality? So you've been in this industry for a long time, and you've seen all improvements from the HoloLens 1, HoloLens 2, HoloLens 3 is coming out probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So what do you see? What would you like to see in the industry from solutions standpoint and also from the hardware standpoint?
I think what drives the HoloLens. Even though the hardware is very cool, it's the software and the usability. If like with the first HoloLens when that came out, there was really no software that supported the construction industry when it first came out. Now there's a great deal of software. It's getting better and better. I see that is what is driving the use of, at least for my industry, using the HoloLens. The more refinement in usability as far as being able to touch and grab things, even haptic feedback type of things. I think we talked earlier about incorporating IoT into the usage. I think that's always been a great idea. I think Zachary had that concept with what they were going to do with their AR devices to be able to look at a gauge and get the history of it. I think and get information on it. I think that's just going to drive more and more technology into the HoloLens. Already, we're seeing the integrations with other applications for communications like Teams, and that will make it better. Different ways of using Teams, different ways of capturing things, different ways of communication with other people as well. As well as I think the interactivity between two people in augmented reality, being able to visualize the same thing in the same spot and work together on that.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Allison. Conclusion. So, what do you like today? What would you like to see in future? And how do you see the improvement in software and hardware?
Definitely agree with John. I think it'll be exciting to see more IoT integrations, as we do more with IoT, and then it's tied into those visualizations through like holographic visualizations. In addition to that, I think just the evolution of the cell signals that we have at our facilities. Some of ours, we don't have a dedicated Wi-Fi setup, so we're still reliant on cell in many areas. And so, I mean, as that evolves and as we have better hotspots, things like that, that will improve just kind of generally across the board the way that we're using the technology and where we can use the technology. And also the ability to lock the visualizations and get a high precision overlay of the digital model. So there have been improvements to that for sure, but I think continuing the evolution of the augmented reality technology and the software to be able to do a really precise overlay of your BIM model in the field, so that it's as you're walking around and as you're seeing that model from different perspectives in the field. I think generally it's working well for us, but I think that'll continue to improve and just get better and better. And for us, I think that will mean when that precision improves and is more reliable, the way that we're using it, then it'll drive adoption of it as well too, just because it'll be more reliable on more sites, on more jobs, and we'll deploy it more.
IoT, 5G, and connectivity. Hopefully 5G is coming soon, and the precise and accuracy. Kurt, do you want to add anything?
I do. I'll kind of build off of Allison's high precision overlay. And the one thing that we've been talking about for a while is, can we do decision making? So we can do optioneering, if you will. Is there the ability to do that in AR? Can we design in AR? So being able to go out to the field or a place and start to pull in different pieces of equipment. This may exist today. We haven't dabbled there. And then the other big area, not hardware wise, but in general, well, maybe hardware related, is I've been thinking about this for a long time, is full telepresence. We're getting much closer with some of the technology that's there today, but how can we really make somebody feel like they're teleported to in a different environment, whether it's be through VR, through AR, or some other type of mixed reality that may not yet exist. Thank you.
That's awesome. Zach, would you like to add something to wrap up?
Yeah, so what I'm happy with today, I'm happy there's stability in the hardware market. It felt like every year for the past 3.5, 4 years, there were multiple hardware vendors that were going out of business. Hardware, at the end of the day, is hard. It's hard to sell. It's hard to produce correctly, get your supply chain in line. But over the past 8 months, it feels like there's been a definite stabilization in the hardware market around wearables specifically. You can kind of tell who the front runners are and who's going to be around for a while. So happy that the hardware market's stabilized. What I'd like to see going forward, and everyone's already touched on this, interoperability between softwares, integrations between softwares. We've talked to all the success stories around Microsoft Teams and visual inspection for Burns and McDonnell. I want to see softwares play nice with each other very easily. The easier it is to get that data from one software to another and from one work process to another, the higher the adoption rate is going to be, the less time you're going to spend trying to get data in the right form, and the more time you're going to be experiencing the data in the field and interacting with it.
Yeah, workflows, easy software, and stable hardwares. Yeah, we know that we had like a hardwares like Zachary that gone away, was very sad, but now we have like a very solid hardwares in the market. So I would like to thank you everyone joining this session. At this point, we're going to take questions, and hopefully we brought a value for our audience today. Please go ahead, if you have any questions, please put in chat, so we're going to answer that from here. Thank you.